we're amidst claims by Elon Musk that electronic voting machines can be hacked. There's been a categorical rejection by several leaders, one among them, Rajeev Chandrasekhar. Thanks very much, sir, for being with us. I thought, Mr. Chandrasekhar, an interesting way of actually doing this was asking you basic questions, because I sense that there is so much that people don't understand about this issue and get straightforward answers. So the first question is this: are Indian electronic voting machines unique and different from what Musk was talking about?
Vishnu, I am obviously not very privy to what the Americans use or Europeans use, but from what I have read up, those are a lot more general purpose platforms that are often connected to the internet and are enabled in many different ways to be connecting to and accessed by the net. In sharp contrast to the Indian EVM, which is designed to be standalone, isolated from the internet, and factory programmed so that there is really no reprogramming of the machines that can ever happen.
Okay. Can control units of electronic voting machines in India be preloaded with manufactured votes? That's the theory. It's an allegation and a fear, in a sense. What's the answer to that?
The answer is no, because this is remember, Vishnu, these questions were asked in 2017 by the same group of political parties that are now raising this bogey again. And in 2017, the Election Commission had not only clarified every one of these questions, but also challenged them to have an EVM hack, to come and prove that the EVMs could be hacked. Nobody showed up to the hack. And that story died, and it surfaced again 7 years later because they have had another defeat. So the answer to your question is, the control unit cannot in any way load the ballot unit, which is a totally separate unit but connected and tethered with the control unit, excepting to set it up and get it ready to count the ballots that are inputted in the ballot unit. So in simple terms, no. And the votes that have to be logged can only be logged in the ballot unit, and each ballot unit can log about 3,500 votes.
All right. Should electronic voting machines be geo-tracked? Again, this is something that comes on the back of fears that who knows where the unit which counts, which actually registers the votes, is going to. What if they get swapped sometime? Should electronic voting machines be geo-tracked?
Look, again, this is using a fancy buzzword to solve a problem that doesn't exist, because each of these EVMs have unique IDs. The Election Commission has a very, I'm not part of the Election Commission, but from what I've read, they have a very, very comprehensive foolproof mechanism of logging each EVM to the constituency and the booth that the EVMs were used for. They have in addition, they have these physical security mechanisms that ensure that these EVMs are located after the election is conducted in one location and physically protected from any external intervention or mischief. So I think whether they should be geo-tagged, having a fancy chip that basically allows them to be GPS tracked, or should they have a much more simple mechanism of having a unique ID, and that the unique ID is tracked by the EC and connected to each of these booths that they are used for. It's a matter of intellectual discussion, but the moment you have geo-tagging or a GPS kind of a facility in an EVM, and you are basically throwing yourself open to again having the EVM being penetrated from the outside. So I think the current design is a very tried and tested design, Vishnu. It is simple, it is rugged, it is robust, it is isolated from the internet, it is not field programmable, and it does a very basic function of logging the votes in each of the constituencies or each of the booths that the machine is meant for. And that, in turn, is something that the booth and the EVM can be correlated with the system and the process that the Election Commission uses.
Mr. Chandrasekhar, this is a question which I'm sure you would have heard many times before. why don't I get a printout for whom I have voted for? There's a VVPAT machine, it shows something, but then that printout, it just disappears. Why can't I feel more secure by having a piece of paper which sort of has, the name of a party or the symbol of a party, and I sort of feel more reassured that who I have voted for is what the machine says I have?
So, Vishnu, there are two types of discussions that we can have around the EVMs. One is, how do we make it more, give it something that gives you more confidence, the ability to have a voter get a record of his vote or her vote. That is a different conversation from the conversation that is being thrust on us today, which is that the EVM somehow represents something that is not robust about our process, our democratic process. And the exact opposite is true. The EVMs have evolved as a consequence of our democratic process, requiring a much more safer, a much more secure voting mechanism. It is way back in 1998, then it was field trial, there were samples. And in 2004, the election that the Congress won was the first election when the EVMs were deployed. Now, is it the Congress's case that the 2004 elections were manipulated? Is it the Congress's case that the Tirunelveli election that I lost was manipulated? So therefore, I think there is a separate conversation, which is to say, is there anything that can be done? The VVPAT, as you know, came up in 2012, 2013 as a consequence of some people saying there should be some way of ensuring there is some additional mechanism to build more trust around the EVM, and the VVPAT mechanism came about. Now there is a 2% sampling of the VVPAT, random sampling, to make sure that the VVPAT is correlated with what has been logged. Now you can argue that there are more improvements to be done, things that can be improved, but that is not the conversation that is being had today. The conversation is a conversation that strikes at the very heart, or attempts to strike at the very heart, the integrity question about the democratic process, and that is not acceptable. We are the world's largest democracy. Our democratic process is something that the people of the world look up to, and to have a group of people running around with half facts and misquoting quotes by somebody sitting 10,000 miles away, and to draw questions around our democratic process, I believe, humbly I say, is wrong, and it is absolutely unconscionable. But to have a conversation like you today initiated, Vishnu, saying, should we not have VVPATs for every vote? That is something I think everybody can around, if there's a consensus, political parties can approach the EC and the EC can take a decision. But to do this is unfortunate, and it's extremely shameful and wrong. To question the efficacy and the integrity of our election process by making these really strange and completely OTP for the EVM type of bizarre arguments that almost calculate, Vishnu, that the people who are listening to it are either ignorant or just going to buy this type of nonsense without questioning it. I'm sorry to say this, but that is a Congress strategy that is doomed to fail.
So the technology itself, as I understand it, in terms of just the EVM itself, it's very basic. It's 70s technology. Since
Absolutely.
then, there's been a lot of which has changed by way, for example, of security features. So the question is this: do you believe that the simplicity of the design itself is what grants our electronic voting machines a certain element of security, or do you believe EVMs need to be more modernized to get additional security features, one of which was the idea of GPS tracking? And that GPS tracking idea is that what if the counting machine, as it were, there are three parts of it, right, is taken somewhere else and it is swapped, right, with another unit? That's the fear. So again, is it possible to have extra security features?
Yeah, look, so let's break this question up into 2-3 parts. One is, should there be a modern avatar of an EVM? I mean, look, you and I both understand technology, and nobody will say no for an improved version of something that is technology today. So I can't say no to that argument. Mm-hmm. But is there something in the very design of the EVM, its simplicity, robustness, its isolation from the internet, and its lack of programmability, external programmability, does that simplicity of design, where it is simply a vote logger, render it almost invulnerable to the conventional hacking to network compute devices. Yes. And I don't think that should change. I don't think we should tinker with the basic structure of that. Now, is there other mechanism that we can innovate to making sure that mistakes don't happen, EVMs don't get exchanged? I think there is already a robust process where booth numbers are allocated unique EVM IDs, and these are correlated. Certainly, a booth in one constituency cannot have an EVM of another constituency being counted against that. There are simple, very robust procedures that the EC has, and I think we are simply chasing the tail of a problem that doesn't exist by talking about all the sophisticated solutions, because the problem doesn't require that kind of sophistication. Remember, these are EVMs that are basically logging votes and are replacing what used to be a notoriously corrupt, notoriously leaky paper balloting system, where people could come with paper ballots. So understand the problem that the EVM was trying to solve. It was solving a corrupt, leaky mechanism of paper ballots and booth capturing with something that is very difficult to interfere with. When somebody puts in a vote that is logged, and I mean, look, Vishnu, anybody sits around a table over a cup of coffee and talks technology, you can always talk about blue sky visioning, about the next thing should have 2 jet engines in it and should fly from one booth to the other booth, and so on and so forth. So, but, look, to the simple question today, this EVM is a design that the world can learn from. It is simple, yet secure, and it is architected to be simple and secure. And I think that was the point I was making to Elon Musk, that sitting 10,000 miles away, sometimes you don't understand the ingenuity of the Indian technology and the simplicity of our technology. People didn't get UPI either. And now the world recognizes it. And maybe it was a time, that's why I offered very politely a tutorial on the EVM, saying that maybe it's time for you to understand that back to basics is sometimes much more a smarter strategy than getting the latest microprocessor and NVIDIA chip in an EVM.
Okay, one specific question, again, this reflects a worry. Is the VVPAT machine, in other words, the paper trail machine, vulnerable to manipulation? And the reason that is asked is apparently there is a symbol upload module on the VVPAT which is preloaded by the Election Commission. So there is a list of candidates which has to be loaded in every single machine, right? VVPAT machine.
Right.
Officials download candidate-specific data from the Election Commission. They then load this onto a VVPAT through a laptop. In other words, there is an external interface
into the control unit.
No, this is actually to the VVPAT machine itself. How otherwise does the VVPAT machine understand, who you voted for? It has to tabulate, right? If you voted for party A, the symbol has to show as party A on VVPAT, right? But there are but every constituency is different very often. So therefore, there is data which needs to be fed into the VVPAT machine, which is constituency specific.
Correct. Yeah, and the sequence of candidates will be different for different
Absolutely. Sequence of parties, sequence of candidates, independents, etc., etc., etc.
Absolutely.
So therefore, therefore, the VVPAT machine has to rely on software, which is a fact. The VVPAT machine relies on basic software.
Yes.
What is the integrity of that software is the question.
No, look, I am not the manufacturer. I certainly am not representative of the man. But like I said, I think, look, this was asked and answered in 2017. The EC gave the political parties, the 13 political parties, if you remember, 7 years ago, the opportunity to come and hack the EVM, ask all these questions at a time when the same opposition parties were the same opposition parties. They did not show up to that hack. So even today, let me, for example, for a minute, assume that the Congress party has stumbled on some amazing revelation of some software that has in turn compromised an EVM. If they have such evidence, instead of building these hypothetical scenarios, they should present it to a court, they should present it to the EC and say, look, here is the clinching evidence. if we keep chasing the tail on these completely amazingly imaginary scenarios, anything technology, Vishnu, is, you can have a point of view on what can go wrong. I can have a point of view of what can go wrong. What constitutes doomsday scenario in your mind? What constitutes, performance and security in my mind? But the only final test of the security of a system, of a digital system and an electronic system, is evidence to the contrary.
No, I accept that, and I understand, and I believe that as well. And I do believe, in as much as we have these discussions, and there's no problem in having these discussions.
Absolutely.
The proof of the pudding is in the eating. If there is a mistake or a fault or a technical issue with an EVM, then somebody has to go and prove it. Otherwise, this is just conversation for the sake of conversation.
Yeah, and what we do is then we make this leap of these political parties, then make this huge leap to saying that the entire democratic process is compromised, the EVM is compromised, which is really shameful. And I don't want to use strong phrases in this conversation, but it is absolutely hitting at the heart of what we hold dear, that we are the largest democracy, not just because we have the largest number of voters, but we have a democracy today where we have a process that has earned the trust of millions and billions of Indians. And most importantly, every election, there is a seamless transfer of power. As you saw in Orissa today, no, I don't see Naveen Patnaik ji jumping up and down and complaining about the EVMs. There was people spoke, people voted, the EVMs logged their votes, and the government changed. It seems to me that the only party today and the only coalition is a Congress-led coalition that constantly wants to create these imaginary scenarios with the sole purpose of creating mistrust in the democratic process. If it was to overturn an election result, I can understand that they are bent out of shape. They want to go and argue this case in a court. But that's not what they're doing. They only want to make these allegations loose and easy, and then have this consequence of the people questioning and losing trust in the system, which I believe is shameful. We are not a country that should deserve that. Our political parties should work to improving the trust of people in our democratic process, and not just use these kind of
and I think the larger picture of how, you were referring to it earlier on as well, these machines have revolutionized our democratic process. Our democratic process is monstrously large. To have the simplicity and the reliability of registering your vote and then having that vote counted in the speed in which it does it,
Vishnu, I have had friends
with minimal mistakes, it's unbelievable.
And Vishnu, I have had friends of mine on the 4th call me from the UK, the US, the Japan, and say 670 million votes counted on one day.
In a few hours, in fact.
It just blows people's minds. Yes.
It is quite
amazing, and we should be proud of that. And we should improve it, yes, but we should certainly not knock the EVM.
No, but I do believe, and I agree with you, but I think it is important to have these conversations to ensure that the technology we have, and which at one level is the basis of our election process, remains robust. I think everybody is in agreement with that.
I'm with you on that.
Yeah. Thanks so much, Rajeev Chandrasekhar, for being with us. I'm now joined by our science editor, Pallav Bagla, who's been doing a lot of research on the machine. And let me be the devil's advocate, right? And this is the primary concern, Pallav, of people, is that I push a button for the party I want. What is there to suggest that that button push doesn't end up being a vote for another party? That's the primary concern.
No, it's very straightforward. Before the polling starts, there are mock polls which are done. About 50 votes are cast well before the actual voting starts. The polling agents are there. They can check each VVPAT which comes out and each vote which is cast by the returning officer or the polling agent.
And this is for how many machines? It's a sample, obviously.
Every machine, every polling booth, this is done, which is called a mock poll. Sometimes when you see that the numbers of votes on the EVM are more than the number of votes actually voted, is because sometimes the returning officer fails to erase the number of votes or the mock poll. So that is how sometimes you see the mismatch in numbers. That is how it happens. But the mock poll is there done in the presence of the polling agents. Polling agents are people who are part of, say, so the BJP would have one, the Congress would have one, Samajwadi Party would have a polling agent. All of them are watching, all of them are signing, all of them are physically signing the EVM, and all of this procedure is very strongly overseen. The counting day on June 4th, there were at least 60 to 70 lakh people who were involved in the counting process. Election Commission officials, polling agents, and the whole paraphernalia. It's Vishnu, 642 million votes were cast in 2024. And people have great faith in the electronic voting machines. From 2004 to now, 400 crore votes have been cast on electronic voting machines in India, and not a single case has been proved of tampering or of any manipulation on the electronic voting machines. These are ghosts which are being brought up again and again. And as for Elon Musk, he was talking more in the context of the American voting machines and the global voting machines. He has no idea how simple and under-designed the Indian voting machine is, and how hackers, who are all prone to using internet to hack, can just not go anywhere near
so, Pallav, let me
a
ask you another
standalone
question.
machine.
This is another doomsday scenario, but I'm trying to understand these doomsday scenarios and dispel them if they need to be dispelled. Can you replace a control unit used for counting from one polling booth with another control unit? In other words,
No.
People have voted in a particular constituency, the machine has to go to a central area to be logged, right? What if a control unit, right, is replaced by another one?
Oh, very straightforward. See, each machine, when the polling starts, there is a unique number on the machine, and these are randomized. So the electronic voting machines which go to each polling booth, even the returning officer does not know. There's a software which decides which goes where. Secondly, each polling agent signs on the outermost slip in a physical form, और वो चपड़े वाला मोहर लगता है उस पे जो पुराने स्टाइल का है. That is done. And then Rajiv was ill-informed, let me say. Each machine, when it moves from the polling booth to the place where it is going, they are all geotagged.
They are geotagged.
Individual machines are not geotagged, but all the vehicles which carry the machines are geotagged. So when it's moving from a polling booth to the vault where they are saved, they are all tagged. And when they come out from the vault, it's the unique number which is matched. So there is no way you can change the control unit and push in a wrong control unit. That is not possible. Because, see, there is not just the electronic ecosystem. The security around the voting machine is also the physical security, and outside the vault, I'm forgetting the exact phrase by which this, where these machines are stored. The polling agents of parties actually
The
sleep
strong
there.
room, right? It's called the strong room, right?
Outside the strong room, the polling agents sleep there.
Yeah.
I go and check on every counting day, every polling day. Since 2004, I have gone and looked at only electronic voting machines. I am not a political correspondent. I don't look at the politics. And I have not seen one proven case of actual tampering in all of these elections. These
All right,
are
Pallav,
bogies
we
which
leave
are
it over
raised.
there, and I think that's the bottom line, that if nobody's been able to prove that these can be hacked or manipulated, it's all theories in the air. Has it happened? If so, where is the evidence?